All right, here we go. We are here today to discuss Mark Lawrence's trilogy, Book of the Ancestor, which begins with Red Sister. And in the middle book, we have Gray Sister. And the final book is Holy Sister. And you have, very nice. I can't hold up my other copies because my daughter stole them. So, which is
Yeah,
good.
so
Oh,
I
there's
have the
your Red
UK.
Sister. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like your
that's
covers.
the
Those are
UK
nice.
UK
You
covers.
have the UK covers. Yeah, I have the American ones. That is a great
Yeah.
picture of Nona there. I assume that's
Oh
Nona.
yeah, I mean she's well rendered on those covers, like on this one as well. She's really
Yeah,
in all her
yeah.
glory of battle and combat.
Do not mess with Nona. Yeah.
Oh no, don't. Please don't.
Yeah, that's
No.
interesting because that is, obviously a different well,
Yeah,
they're
really.
holding obviously the same object, which we will talk about later. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
but interesting
yeah.
versions. So anyway,
Yeah.
I am here with my friend Angela from Do Unicorns Read to discuss this marvelous trilogy, which I recently finished, and you finished some months ago.
Finished some months ago. I think I finished beginning of or middle of September or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
couldn't wait. I'm sorry. I couldn't wait.
It's okay. It's a good trilogy to not wait for because I think we both, it's fair to say, we both enjoyed it very much.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Great fan of this one. Um, I've only read one other Mark Lawrence book. What's this? Prince of Thorns, and
Ah,
didn't really vibe with this so much. Now this is a couple of years ago, so way before I started the channel.
yeah.
Um, and maybe I wasn't in the right frame of mind or mood or whatever. So this one came as a really great surprise. I was really impressed. Like
Yeah,
so,
tonally it is very different from Prince of Thorns. I
so
think
I've heard. Yeah, yeah, and it is. Yeah,
yeah, you can see, I think, some similarities in terms of the narrative style and other
mm,
things, but tonally very different. Where
yeah,
Prince of Thorns is grimdark, and this is not, obviously. So,
yeah.
but yeah, obviously I loved it because I gave it to my daughter to read, so that should tell you something.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and I think it's good. Yeah, would be a good recommendation for especially women, I think, because it has an almost exclusively female cast of characters, which I really
yeah,
enjoyed as well, which is not very often in fantasy. So,
yeah.
yeah, definitely extra points for that. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I actually enjoyed that aspect of it a lot, and I don't know how you felt about a male author taking on all these female perspectives. Did you ever, while reading, think, I don't think a woman would write a woman this way, or wow, he really nailed it. I'm just not thinking about the fact.
I was more in the wow, he really nailed it
Okay.
camp. Not so much during the first one, because when we meet Nona first, she's still quite young, more a child, not really a woman yet. And at the end of the first volume, I was thinking, I wonder how this will continue in Grey Sister, because they will get older
Mm,
and how much male gaze might creep in, or
right.
how objectified might they be, because yeah, you cannot write this book without describing some bodily features, no? Especially
Hmm.
with all those fight scenes where those bodies are very, very much in action, no? So I was really, who knows what's going to happen, but I was very impressed, I have to say. I was thinking he does it really very, very well, very respectfully as well. And
Yeah.
also something that totally surprised me is he's the first male fantasy author that I've seen mentioning menstruation in a fantasy
Oh,
novel.
uh-huh.
And I was really kind of like, I thought, wow, somebody did his homework on this. Somebody did his research very well. So yeah,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah.
That's great. I'm going to make a note to, in my book, mention menstruation now.
Okay, whatever floats your boat there. Um, but
Yeah.
well, it's something that's discussed not just for fantasy literature, but also discussed with female authors. No, so kind
Yes.
of like how much of a female body reality do we want to yeah, want to show and want to kind
Yeah.
like write about. And this is just one of the big examples of the, let's say, more taboo areas of
Yeah, you're
female
so right.
existence.
You're so right. I cannot think of another male author. I can think of some
No, no,
women
me neither.
authors, like R.F. Kuang mentions it in the Poppy War
Yeah, there are
trilogy.
some women authors, but
Yeah.
male author, no, I think he is
Yeah.
really the first where I encountered that. Now it's not a big scene, which also is good because it
Right.
shouldn't be, no, because they're all females. They know about it, no, they don't need to kind of like give all the details, no. So it's not a big scene, but that it's there at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, that's a great point, and I'm glad you raised it. I would not have raised that on my own, but you're right. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
General, we're keeping this spoiler free at the moment, except for mentioning menstruation. Um,
That's a big spoiler now for book
Big spoiler, everybody. Sorry.
Sorry,
Yeah.
ouch.
Oops. But
Yeah.
no, we are keeping this spoiler free at the moment, but we will eventually get into spoilers and talk about our favorite bits from the trilogy. But just as a general assessment, then, Angela, I think we've already got some idea, but what's your general assessment of the trilogy? What are the things that you enjoyed? And whatever you want to talk about in a general non-spoiler way.
Yeah, okay. I like the structure because I mean this slightly non-linear narration that's going on. I really like that. Um, I also seem to be somebody who likes this fusion of fantasy and science fiction. Um, Especially recently, I find myself more and more drawn to books that kind of have this, let's say, yeah, that they're pushing the boundaries a little bit more and that you have this feeling, yeah, okay, there's something really innovative going on and it's not so run of the mill. No? And I
Yeah.
enjoyed that with this trilogy very much so as well. The characters are just outstanding. I mean, Nona, of course, is an old-time favorite, but also the Abbess Glass. I think
Oh, yes.
she is really great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so lots of great characters. The magic as well. I find the magic really very, very interesting
Mm.
because it seems to weave together different strands of yeah, physics, but also almost like a Buddhist outlook in there and things like
Yeah.
that. So I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. I loved all those things as well. And the atmosphere of the
Oh yeah,
trilogy,
yeah,
right? Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
it's otherworldly and just
It really is.
uh,
And like this climate event that's going on, no?
yeah.
You want a hot water bottle.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, I mean, it's just so just
Yeah.
bleak and not grimdark, but it is
No, I
bleak.
don't think so. I think there's too much hope there, especially
Yeah.
the last volume. The ending, of course, is very much geared towards there is a future. No? So,
Yeah.
whereas with some grimdark, there is no future
No, no, I
whatsoever.
mean, yeah, it tends to be. It's funny because I think Mark Lawrence often gets that label grimdark because of the first trilogy, the
Mm,
Broken
mm.
Empire trilogy, and really nothing else he's written is grimdark except for that first trilogy. So, and take that as you will, but
Yeah,
yeah, I totally agree with you about everything you said. You know, in terms of the characters and the not just the central character who is all a favorite of mine now, but also the supporting
yeah.
characters and the friends, the theme, the handling of theme, and
Oh yeah, the scenes
particularly
are really
it's so good, right?
yeah.
Particularly friendship, right?
Oh, definitely, definitely. It's probably one of the best or better books that I've read on the theme of friendship. You know?
Yeah,
And also the way how he handles some themes that they're introduced, but then you're kind of like, yeah, they're almost a little bit subverted, and you don't really know, is this in earnest, or will this change again? Or it's really, really interestingly done. So yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I just love the friendship, and I think he weaves in a lot of other sub themes under the friendship umbrella. For example, sacrifice and
Yeah,
vengeance and redemption, and they all sort of get
loyalty,
loyalty. Yeah,
yeah, found family,
yeah,
no, so
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay. Well, I think we've done a pretty good job for any folks who have not yet read the trilogy and just wanted to get a general sense of it. So we will be moving on to spoilers. This is your warning, everybody. Spoilers, spoilers. So we're going to go into spoilers, and maybe we could begin actually by talking about that structure, because that is one of the most
Yeah, yeah.
distinctive things about Mark Lawrence. Every trilogy I've read of his so far has
Hmm.
not progressed in a linear fashion. He makes
Okay, he loves this,
abundant
does he?
use, abundant use of flashbacks. So
Hmm.
let's talk about that a little bit. With the very first book, Red Sister, opens with a bit that ends up being something closer to the present of the third book, right? And
Yeah,
you get
yeah.
that little. It's like a bit of a
Almost like a framing narrative that's set in the
exactly,
future in the first book that we start off with this really
yeah,
cool sentence, not to what's this to kill a nun, bring an army of sufficient size or something like that.
yeah.
Um, I love this sentence. I've heard other people who say, "Oh no, no, not the sentence. This ruins it for me right from the start."
I think it's
But I
brilliant.
totally
It's one
love
of my
this. I think
favorite
so
opening
too.
lines ever. Yeah.
I think so too because
Yeah.
it has this like on the one hand almost a bit archaic sentence structure, at least from an English speaker's point of view, I presume. Whereas if I look at this from a German point of view, it's a totally normal sentence because you can juggle everything around.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and also like it's an imperative, no, it's bring no, a sufficient army of sufficient size. No, so
Yeah.
kind of like where directly is addressed as a reader, no, to kind of like be careful and also take a certain action. So I really think it's really cleverly done because
Yeah.
it sucks you in immediately, you know, because you think like, what nuns, armies? How does this supposed to go together? But yeah,
And that, of course, gives us an introduction to Sister Thorn, who I first thought was going to be Nona. But
yeah,
turns out, did you think that too? Yeah.
yeah. I thought so too.
Yeah.
I thought as well that kind of like the nun on the cliff that we see that would be
Yeah.
Nona in the end, but no, no, she
It
isn't.
turned out to be Arabella or
Yeah,
Aura. And Nona becomes Sister Cage, which is a brilliant name and has so
yeah.
much resonance with her character, having been put in a cage literally, but I think also metaphorically speaking. I mean, it's a very resonant name for her, Sister Cage, because she has been caged in
Well,
some.
caged inside, also kind of like caging herself sometimes, not putting
Yes.
herself or maneuvering herself into corners where she gets caged and can't get out of easily again. So yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah,
Yeah, good stuff, right? And it's
yeah,
funny
totally.
how in the first book, Arabella Jotsis, I think she's a Jotsis, right?
Yeah, yeah, she's just one of
She
the
is
ruling
one of
this
the,
one.
she's not Nona's friend initially. There is an antagonism there between
Yeah.
her and Nona initially. And this is a recurring thing in there, isn't it? So you have Nona and Arabella who become not just friends, but also, I think, at the end of the third book, it's fair to assume that they're lovers.
Oh
And
yeah, I think already
yeah,
in the second book when they're
oh, they were
older, kind of
definitely,
like it's definitely kind of like a love relationship that's going on there. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
Although they seem to have a tough time. There's a little bit of dance going on there between the two of them.
yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, I think it fits well with the second book, which is a lot about identity and finding your identity,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
coming of age, and also then of course finding your sexual identity, no?
Yes.
Because Nona seems to be very, how shall I say, fluent or bisexual almost because she
Yeah.
also takes up with this ring fighter Regal.
Yes. Regal. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so
And she likes Regal, but I think she loves Arabella by the end. I mean,
yeah, I
that's,
think there's
yeah.
something else because I think if I remember this right, I think it's Arabella who says, "Why are you surprised that I'm coming back?" Because she had already left the convent. And so, but why are you surprised about that? After all, we have a bond.
Yeah.
And she
Yeah.
doesn't name it. She doesn't say, but we're lovers or we have been lovers and you
Yeah.
should know that I still love you or anything. But she says, we have a bond,
Yeah.
which
I
is
actually,
something
I was,
different
I
in
was
a way.
crying. I was crying at that
Oh, yeah,
point.
the end is so, I mean, but he pulls it off. It could have become so cheesy, no? The two
Yeah.
standing on
Yeah.
the cliff, hand holding hands. No, it could have been so cheesy, and it isn't.
Yep.
Yeah,
So true. So true.
yeah,
He handled it really well, and it got me,
yeah.
definitely got me. But I find it interesting how he has quite a few. Now there's Nona and Arabella, who start out as definitely not friends.
No, no.
It's this aristocrat versus the poor kid, and
Yeah,
there's a
there's a lot of.
misunderstanding at the heart of that, really, that gets resolved by the second book. And then, of course, there's also other examples of this. There's Nona and oh, what's her name? The chosen one.
Oh, Zoli or Soli or
Zol, yes, Zol,
or
or yeah, however
Zol
you say
or
that.
whatever you want
She
to
also is an
pronounce
enemy
it.
at first, and it turns into a really, that turns into a beautiful friendship as well, I
Yeah.
thought. And it has a lot to do with Zol's humanity.
Mm.
And also, I think Nona discovering her own humanity. And that's, so there's a lot going on there. And then there's like Nona and Darla. They start out, basically fighting each other, and they turn into friends. So you have several examples, I think, and even among the mentors. So you have Sister Wheel, who persecuted Nona the entire time
Mm.
she was there. But in the last book, she's like,
Yeah.
maybe I was wrong about you, Nona Gray, because
Yeah. Yeah.
she chose the right, she chose to be a holy sister, right? So, but she turns into a bit more of an ally. So that's a pattern here, right?
That's a pattern. Also, kind of like even in the first book, no? Abbess Glass, you think at first,
Yeah.
even though she picks Nona, but we have over long periods this feeling like, yeah, she picked her, but if she doesn't comply to her version of her or what she wants her to do, then the support could be withdrawn at any minute. No? So it's not so clear in the first book and becomes stronger than in the second and third as well, how she
Yeah.
supports her and why she supports her. So yeah, I think we have this with several people that are around her. But
Yeah.
then also kind of like this really almost tragic streak that when she finally has gotten, yeah, over her own hang-ups, but also kind of like overcome the adversity of whoever she's thrown in together, um, that she loses them, no? Like
Yeah.
her very first friend that she makes in the cage, Essa,
Yeah.
who then
There's
ends up
Hessa.
with her.
Oh, poor
Yeah,
Hessa. Yeah.
yeah, ends up with her in the convent, and then I mean that death scene is heart ripping in a way, no?
Yeah, yeah, that's
Um,
tough. That is tough. Yeah.
yeah,
I missed Hessa in the second and the third
yeah,
book, and she's
yeah,
present. There's a presence there. But I think one thing Lawrence does beautifully is Hessa dies at the end of the first book, but she is a presence in the rest of the trilogy. Abbess Glass has died when we get to the
mm,
third book, but she is a presence in the third book very much. I mean, her whatever she set in motion is still influencing, and in that sense, people remain part of our lives, don't they?
yeah. I think as well. I think what he does very well is how those themes, even though this is a fantasy how shall I say, world where we're in, and it's very, very different from our world.
Yeah,
How the characters react is very much how we as humans are reacting, and it's very much kind of like what we as humans see as our central themes, like yeah, friendship, love, loss, grief.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And you can't have
and
one without the other either, can you?
no, exactly. No, and I think this is probably one of the yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily lessons, but something that the book transports kind of like through all three volumes, that we need both. Not that just one, if we're just one thing, then
Yeah.
we're not really human in a way. And we might
Yes.
talk about this a little bit more later on. But what I wanted to say as well is when you say those characters stay with us, yeah, because Nona remembers them and keeps them alive in her memory. And I think this goes very well together with this non-linear structure of the books, no? Because we
Yeah.
get those flashbacks when she remembers, or those
Yep.
almost like visions that she has where she kind of like thinks those people are alive again. Um,
Yep.
no, and I think that's yeah, it's what we as humans experience as well. No? If a very dear friend dies, You might go down the street and you see somebody from the back that might have the same height and the same hair color, and you're thinking, oh, and then you're realizing, no, that
Yeah.
person is dead for 2 weeks. No, you should have got onto that.
Yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely. That's
yeah.
beautifully said. That's really beautifully said. And I think Lawrence does capture that truth, that experience very well in this trilogy.
Yeah.
One of the things that makes it so beautiful. Well, we can talk about the magic, I think, because that's where a lot of your thoughts were leading, I think, in terms of the
A little
path.
bit. Yes, yes, the
Yeah.
past. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and all of that. So I'll let you start on that as well, because you mentioned earlier there's a kind of Buddhist connection there, and I think you're absolutely spot on, at least the way I'm reading it. And the other
Yeah,
kinds
the
of
way I'm
magic are
reading.
cool, but the path is the one I think that there's the most to talk about, maybe.
Yeah, I think the past, this element of the past that, yeah, the fact that the past is also the fabric of life, and that
Mm.
everything is interwoven. I think this is where the Buddhist, like,
Threads, yeah,
yeah, exactly, interwoven threads, and that are fabric, and we are a part of this fabric. And because we're part of this fabric, we're also connected to everything else and everybody else. And I think this is, yes, one of the teachings of Buddhism, that we have this interconnectedness with life.
correct.
At least this is why it reminded me so much of kind of Buddhist teachings in that respect.
Yeah,
Whole idea. Now, I mean, what's not Buddhist, of course, is then this idea also, no, that we can pull those threads and that we can manipulate
uh-huh.
others by, if we're kind of like pulling the right thread, no, make
Yeah.
them do things that they might not want to do. No, that's, of
Mhm.
course, not so Buddhist and not so, how shall I say, perhaps morally approved in general.
Yeah.
But it's a big theme as well that's connecting to the magic, but in general as well, this idea of, yeah, lying, and what are lies, and are we supposed to use them, are we not supposed to use them? No, there are discussions around that a lot, as there are also discussions around stories that go together with this, and what
Yeah.
gives the meaning to stories.
Yeah.
um
Very
yeah.
true. Yeah, and to make one other connection to what you were saying about the idea of the interconnectedness of all of life,
Mhm.
we see that in the whole concept of the ancestor as well,
Yeah, yeah.
especially when we get to Holy Sister, as is explained.
Mm.
We are all the ancestor. We all go back to this. It's like a tree, right? We're all branches
Yeah,
on this
yeah, it's
tree.
symbolized as a tree, I think, like a
Yeah,
tree of life thing. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So similar
yeah,
concept to what you were
yeah.
explaining in regard to the path, I think.
Mm.
That
The
definitely
other
makes
thing is
sense.
why I said also weaves in physics is this whole idea of time perception. No?
Yes.
So Nona, who has this Hanska blood and therefore can be lightning fast, can also kind of like stretch time and make everything kind of like slow down. No?
Yeah.
So how we perceive time plays a huge role in the magic and how the magic is used. Um,
Yeah.
and I was
Yeah.
wondering, like, I think Mark Lawrence has a doctorate in mathematics. Is that
Well,
correct?
he's a smart fellow. I think
Yeah, he's a very smart fella, but like, I think it
yeah.
shows, like, and especially how he conceptualized the magic. I thought, like, yeah, somebody was at the math books there before he started writing a certain chapter.
Yeah, I'm sure that his understanding of quantum physics is much more
Yes.
sophisticated than
Yeah,
mine.
listen, don't even go there.
Yeah, but yes, yeah, he has a science background, and I think he was even for a time a working scientist. So
Mm.
yeah, that makes sense, and that's part of why I think it's so natural for him to blend science fiction and fantasy without
Mm.
really thinking about it. Because
Yeah.
I mean, is this fantasy or is it science fiction? What I mean, and who cares really? But
I don't care. I have to
yeah,
say, I don't care. It's a good book. That's the only thing that matters in the end
it's a
there.
great story that matters much
Yeah,
more.
yeah, yeah,
But I
exactly.
do like that. I
So,
like he does that consistently, and at least the three
mm,
trilogies that I've read is he just
mm.
I don't care if this is fantasy, science fiction. I'm going to do what's cool here, what works, right? So um,
Yeah, and there's a lot of, I mean, cool stuff in there, no? So also kind of like how they train them to use the magic. I mean, it's
uh-huh.
yeah, it's really, really great. It's like the this training pass, this obstacle pass that they have that kind of like has all those moving platforms, and they're
Yeah.
kind of like supposed to kind of like do it as fast as possible without kind of like losing their footing or being thrown off it in a way. I thought it's another nice kind of like illustration of what the path is supposed to be,
Yeah.
like
Like
this
a
theme
physical.
almost that you
Yeah.
follow,
Yeah.
and they have kind of like then this physical obstacle course to illustrate what
Yeah.
is meant like as a, how shall I say,
It's like a
yeah,
metaphor.
basically,
Yeah.
yeah, as a metaphor for something that's more like a mental thing in the end than when they really use this magic.
Yeah, so true. Yeah. And you know, the school setting is such an ideal thing for developing the kind of friendships that he wants to explore.
Mm.
And you know, we've seen it done, and you know, J.K. Rowling does it in Harry
There's
Potter, and
so many, like
so many examples. You know, we can go
yeah,
back to Le Guin's The Wizard of Earthsea. You know, they're just that it's an
yeah.
ideal setting. I mentioned the Poppy War a moment ago. Patrick Rothfuss, The Name of the Wind, on and on and on. There are lots of examples of this school setting. But I like Lawrence's twist on it in here, where it's the convent of Sweet Mercy, when mercy turns out to be an important theme as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And the name, I mean, that name for the convent
Yeah.
of Sweet Mercy is just,
It's a good
yeah.
touch.
I
Yeah.
have a friend actually, she went to not the convent of Sweet Mercy, but was taught by the Mercy Sisters, no, which is
Oh,
an
okay.
order here in Ireland. So yeah, they do exist, but I don't think they fight with swords or magic or
No
anything.
swords? Oh, cool. Come on. Like,
Yeah, it's pretty boring.
oh well. But that's another thing he does is he takes the concept of a nunnery, but
Yeah,
he makes them assassin nuns and warrior nuns and magic wielding nuns. And it's
exactly.
just like
Yeah.
I'm sold right there, you know. It's just what a concept. So just I think he did a brilliant job of just picking the right concept to go with that magic
Yeah.
school setting, and just giving us the love for the characters is born within that setting, I think.
Mm.
And then when they go out in the world, of course, we're rooting for them. And there's the bigger threat that looms outside. There's a couple bigger threats, really.
Yeah,
So
they are
there's the
actually. Yeah.
internal threats, and then there's some bigger ones outside, including the climate, but other ones. So you want to talk about those a little bit?
Yeah, and I was glad that they're there because, especially in the second book, because I was thinking, okay, being in the school setting and the lessons, all this was very entertaining and nice to read the first time around. But if he
Yeah.
would have continued with this for another two books, I think I would have gotten bored on one level, but also probably I would have had this feeling this is more YA, this is
Uh-huh.
reading a bit too young, no? But one of the things the books, and I don't think I would classify them as YA because
I wouldn't either, actually. Whatever
even
YA
as an
means. Yeah.
8-year-old, Nona voices concepts and problems that are definitely not what a child of her age would necessarily kind of have access to. But on the other hand, he gets away with it, not because she is this outsider character, so you don't expect her to be the typical 8-year-old to start with.
Right. Right.
No, so there is that element of it. Yeah, I like the political wrangling, no, that's going on. It's in parts very Machiavelli type
Mhm.
thing where
Yeah.
different factions all want power, and then try to use, this leftover technology from,
Yeah.
what do they call them? The missing ones that
Yeah.
arrived on this planet Abbott and left their spaceship technology behind.
Yeah.
No? But then this technology is partly woven into this religion of the ancestor,
Hmm.
no? Because they have the ship heart and that kind of fuels their magic a little bit or enhances their
Definitely.
magic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but then we also have the people who are living on the ice, who have a completely or a slightly
Yes.
different way of how um, they explain those leftovers. No? And
Yeah.
it's interesting to see how he weaves this all together then with this political wrangling and then, something that is now I would say almost a religious war, what then breaks out in the end when kind of like this starts to explode, not
Yeah.
because each faction wants to use yes their explanation to get the technology and thereby get the power in a way.
Well, in a world too, and this is a Beth that we're talking about, where the ice is encroaching, and this little narrow
Mm,
strip that's kept unfrozen by the satellite moon going around and melting the ice. It's a little bit close to home in a way, though, isn't it? A world of decreasing
yeah,
resources and too
yeah.
many people, and the conflict that is being essentially fueled by the fact that you have a world with decreasing resources. And
Mm,
and if you put, a bunch of rats in a smaller and smaller space, they're going to fight more and more for that. And with less and less cheese, they're going to fight more and more for that little bit of cheese.
mm,
So that I think is a pretty important thing that he's included there as well.
yeah.
But it's really the characters who are at the heart of it. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about Nona, especially because you talked about little Nona, and I was worried for this kid.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
you can't help getting worried about her.
yeah, it was interesting in the
Yeah.
beginning. She was a very broken little girl, and a
Mm,
lot of terrible things had happened to her, including being sold by her own mother. And there was a lot of unreliable narrator stuff going on in the first book, where she was telling stories about what happened to her, how she got sold, and ultimately, it was a very difficult thing for her to confront the fact that her own mother ultimately seems to have
yeah.
given her up, perhaps from fear because of the fact that Nona was in that, I mean, horrible, traumatizing incident where she was being abducted or attacked and defended herself, but ended up killing all those people, and thought of herself as a monster. I think essentially she
Yeah.
part of
Yeah. Yeah.
her
Yeah.
growth as a character is learning her humanity, where when she was little, she thought of herself as a monster and didn't think she could have friends. And the first fellow, the juggler guy, it's just so touching how desperately she wants him to be her friend, and her understanding of friendship is
Mm,
something that this is very much part of her journey, isn't it?
very much so. Yeah. I don't know if I remember this right, but wasn't she sent into the forest by her parents
Well, she was
when
sent there,
she first
essentially
detected
lured
them?
there. The juggler guy was actually sent there
Or lured there? Yeah. Yeah.
to
Okay.
lure
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
And so I think he
Which
felt
of course
guilty
had a
about
little bit
that.
of a fairy tale vibe going on, kind of like Hansel and Gretel in the forest
Very much
type of
so, but also the theme
setting.
that here's your friend, but your friend betrays you. She
Yeah.
realized that, oh, my
And I
friend
think,
betrayed me. And that Clara is another example of a friend who betrays her and her other friends later on. So it seems like another theme in here, that how do you trust when your
yeah,
own
and she has
mother?
huge problems with this, no? Like,
Yeah.
and if she trusts, it's very black and white, no? It's either the one or the other. You're my friend or you're my enemy, and there
Hmm.
is no in between for Nona. Nona doesn't kind of like have a grail scale going on there or anything like that.
Yeah.
Um, which is understandable, of course, no? On also that she develops this fierce loyalty. No?
Yes.
Friendship and loyalty are almost the same for her. There's not much of a difference. No? If you're friends, then you're loyal to death when it
Yep.
comes to
Which
Nona.
is why, even though Clara betrays her, she's like, no, you're my friend. And it's almost like
Exactly.
she's
No? So
insisting, and by
yeah,
just being on insisting, she's going to make it a reality. You're my friend, Clara, so you're going to be my friend. And
yeah,
it works. It kind of
and
works,
even if you
doesn't it?
don't want to be, I'll make you.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, she appears in this early stage almost a little bit autistic in
I
some
agree.
respects, and
I
how
agree.
she reacts, no, because and how she relates to people in some respects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suspect, and I haven't asked Mark Lawrence about this, and I don't know if he's been asked, but I suspect you're right. That's how I read her character as well,
Hmm.
from the start. And even as an older woman, I think there's
There are
definitely.
still kind of like those echoes of this,
I think so.
early way how she reacts and relates to people. Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
so. I
very much
mean,
so.
I think let's put it this way. I think if Nona were in our world, she would be labeled on the spectrum, you know.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
would say so as well. What I also found interesting is when you say she sees herself as a monster because others label her a monster, no? When she
Mm,
comes back into the village and she's smeared in blood and gore, um, and they realize she isn't injured, no? So where is this coming from that she must have killed those people?
right.
So she's kind of like, yeah, labeled a monster, but then also that at the very end of the trilogy, it's
Mm,
Nona who's the most human one.
yes, because
No,
of that act of mercy.
yeah,
Yeah.
because of the act of mercy, because of her compassion, but also because of her flaws.
Yes. Actually, you're so right. It is
No,
because of her flaws that she's able to act in mercy the way she does at the end when Zol hands over the moon, the control of the moon to her and says,
yeah,
"Okay, give Nona control of
yeah,
the moon."
because
Yeah.
Soul is the kind like more pure version of kind of like because her tribe believes that the ship heart will clear her of the devils that are inside her, which they
Yeah.
think as kind of like, I don't know, some type of embodied sins or something. And that if you kind of like purge them out of you, then you get closer to the ancestor and,
Right.
yeah, almost get a, I don't know, godlike status in a way.
But her
No?
humanity
And
is
then we
gone.
have the
Yeah.
other kind of like the flip side of that. Isht, who
Yes.
is has all the devils inside her, no? So they're kind of at the opposite ends of the spectrum. The only
Yeah.
really human then is Nona because she
Yeah.
has this mix, no?
Yeah. So beautifully said. And I couldn't agree more. She makes this very humane choice at the end, and it stems
Mm.
from her being a complex, flawed person. And it's like Zol is like kind of indifferent at this point, and she's remote. So
Yeah,
she
she's
can,
remote. She
right?
has her eye already on, I don't know, some higher plane of being or something where she wants to go then in the end and also does go. I mean, she
Yeah.
almost evaporates or something in the end
Yeah.
of the book. Uh, no, so yeah,
And
it's
even
also
even
nice.
notice, go ahead.
I think it's also nicely foreshadowed because when Nona learns how to access the past, the
Ah,
nuns train her and say, "You have to find your serenity, you know,
oh,
start
yes.
meditating." And she has this little kind of like a mantra almost, this little song that she's kind of like that
Yeah.
reciting that kind of like find her the serenity and focus her mind. And it never works. It
No,
never
no,
ever works for her.
no.
But it does work when she gets really angry. No? So when her perceived flaw, this anger that is flaring inside her comes out, no problem. So I think this it's a nice foreshadowing of kind of like, yeah, our flaws, even our anger
Yeah.
might have some use and might be there for a reason.
Yeah, Nona, the
Yeah.
battle goddess. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
well, she's incredible
Well,
in those moments.
you
Yeah.
don't want to meet her by yourself in a dark alley,
Well,
that's for
get out of the
sure.
way. Yeah, I mean, yeah. But and even there at the end, though, I thought it was interesting how her friends were like, "What are you doing? Just wipe them all out. You know, kill
Yeah,
all of
yeah,
the enemy." And Nona is actually the, as you said, the most compassionate in that moment,
yeah,
and it's
yeah.
because she is a mixture. It is her flaws that enable her to see that no,
Mm,
this is the way we need to go. I think that's a fairly sophisticated thing that Mark Lawrence is doing there at in that scene where,
mm. Oh yeah,
right, we're
yeah.
embracing our flaws and we are incomplete. You know, you see Zol and you feel there's some tragedy in where she's ended up
Mm,
because
yeah,
she's lost her humanity. She's lost her connection to the humans around her. To some, there's a tiny bit of her still in there, and maybe that's why she hands over, you know, control to her friend.
yeah.
But
Gives
it's
her the
not like she's the
control.
Zol who came hunting after her supposed enemy, Nona, in the second book. She came after her to help to rescue her, which was very touching because they were
Mm,
supposedly kind of like not really, but there was an
getting on and yeah,
yeah, there was an
yeah.
evolving friendship going on there, and I thought that was really beautifully handled too.
Mm.
But yeah, the friends couldn't come to the same epiphany that Nona did. And so I thought that was a really brilliant ending where she acts from a place of compassion, even though she does end up killing the queen and the few hundred unfortunate individuals right around her. But she doesn't wipe out an
Well,
entire people.
I mean, it's not the first time that she wipes out a whole group of people, no?
Yeah.
She has a track record there. But I think the important thing is that this time she knows to stop, and she knows to stop out of her own volition.
Yeah.
It's not Abbess Glass who's then kind like putting a hand on her shoulder, says, okay, you have to stop this. No, we needed to get rid of our
Yeah.
immediate enemies,
Yeah.
fine, but no, now it's time to kind of like take a step back and stop. But in the end, that she can do this by herself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's the big
It's that moment of
difference.
maturation and
Yeah,
she's a
yeah.
full person. It's kind of interesting too because you mentioned Abbess Glass, who also I think had a journey of her own, which we get through the flashbacks. She was in
Mm.
charge of the torturers at one point,
Yeah, she
and
was in
it's
touch of the tortures in one point, and
yeah,
also that she was a mother,
and
or
she
not,
lost her child, and
and
that
she
was
lost
the
her child.
catalyst. That was the
Yeah,
catalyst
yeah,
that turned
yeah,
her into Abbess Glass, the
yeah.
compassionate, wise, and very good at planning the future
Very,
individual that we
yeah,
meet. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah. There's some other
yeah.
favorites we haven't mentioned yet in terms of the characters. We mentioned known as peers, but there also are. I thought the relationship between Apple and Kettle was
Oh
beautifully
yeah,
done. Right?
yeah. Very nicely done. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
That was a
yeah,
favorite, and there were moments when they both had to save the other. And another thing that really got me at the end, I'm even choking up a little now, was Kettle losing Apple that way.
yeah,
And it was tough, that was just because it was a
yeah,
beautiful relationship, and also Kettle's connection with Nona was special. And to see her hurt so deeply that way was really tough.
yeah. Also, this other thing that the past seems to, yeah, it's almost like a different version of empathy that they can employ, no, by
Yeah,
having this thread into the mind of somebody else, no. And I
yeah.
mean, again, we all have that, no, because
Mhm.
when we're empathetic towards somebody, then that's because we can imagine what that person is feeling and how that person is maybe hurt or no, happy or whatever. And in this case, kind of like they are really kind of like fused with that other person in the book. No? But again, kind of like a nice, how shall I say, illustration or metaphor of a concept that we're all familiar with in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah. So some of the baddies get their just desserts. All ends up like hamburger more or less at the end, and we have others.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting what Lawrence decided to do with Joelle and the fact that
Mm.
he was young and really not an entirely willing accomplice to what was going on. And there was another act of mercy on Nona's part. Like, I don't know, you may deserve to, but
Yeah.
it's not for
And I
me.
think it's one of her other friends, is it Ruli, who actually says to her,
Why don't you
should
kill
we
her?
kill her?
Yeah.
No, and Nona says, then no, no, better not. No? So yeah,
Yeah. And that
yeah,
becomes a kind of I think a little bit of a foreshadowing of what she does with
mm.
the, when she has control of the moon.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, with the very last part of the battle in the end.
yeah.
I also think the characters are so compelling because they have this really rich inner life. Yeah, they're
Yes.
very multi-dimensional in some respects.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and all of them, not just Nona or Abbott Glass or the baddies, but almost all of the characters have this potential of being very multidimensional.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that makes them very compelling when it comes to, yeah, us rooting for them, or when a character dies, that will kind of like really, it really shocks you, no? That you're thinking, oh my God, no, no, not that one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful because we see all these younger characters moving towards self-realization. like, and of course Nona
Mm.
is the central one, but the others as well, Arabella and the others who make it. Poor Darla doesn't make it to the end, but
No.
and but we also have these older characters who we have their reflections, like Abbas
Mm.
Glass and also Apple, and it's really neat to get Kettle as well, their reflections on their past, and they're at a later stage of life, and so we get glimpses into all these stages of life as well that are
Yeah,
very
it's very
compelling.
multi-generational, isn't it? In
Yeah,
a way. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Well, beautiful. Is there anything that I'm sure we've missed a bunch of things,
Oh,
but
there's so many things. We could
yeah.
probably, yeah, maybe we could talk a little bit about this idea of free will as well,
Hmm.
and kind of like the role that lies play in the role in the book, and then also stories. No, when we said at the beginning that Nona tells a lot of different origin stories of herself, and we kind of like, no, that's a very, yeah, unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
Um, but also then this idea of the chosen one. And
Hmm.
that's maybe as well an unreliable narration, not a
Yeah.
story that nobody really knows. Was this just invented out of political reason and to kind of like gather people together around this one faith and idea? You know? Um, and it's yeah, I don't know. Does it really get decided? Maybe in the end, maybe Nona is the chosen one after all. Maybe,
Hmm.
but if she's the chosen one, then I would say, but then all humanity is probably the chosen one as well, no?
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're so right. I think what Lawrence is doing there is casting some doubt onto the validity of
Hmm.
prophecy and history and mythology, and these are all narratives, aren't they? They're all
Yeah,
narratives, and we
yeah,
tend
yeah.
to make our present fit those narratives in ways that may be a bit artificial, that we might be deluding ourselves a
Hmm.
little bit. But yeah, it's never clear really who or what this chosen one thing is, and then Zol has a good time playing with that as well when they're in their journey over the ice together, and which was really, I thought, profoundly cool. I mean, it was just that was such an amazing part of this story to me when they were
Hmm.
journeying on the ice, and you got this glimpse of these other lives that are being lived outside the corridor. These people
Yeah,
in
and
the
also
ice.
then their stories, no? And when
Yeah,
Soul kind of like says to her when I think Noda tells her and says, well, but this whole chosen one thing is just a story. We
yeah,
don't believe this. You know that was made up.
right.
And then she says, well, maybe my people have a story about this black-eyed goddess that comes to the ice to
Exactly.
rescue them.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I really loved Zoll in that part. She seemed a bit stiff, in the when we first
yeah.
meet her, but you can't really blame her. And then you get to know her, and I do feel sad in a way. Maybe she's fine though, being all. I mean, we talked about self-realization. She's kind of like gone to nirvana there, I guess, at the end, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've
But it's
heard,
also
I've heard.
interesting
Yeah, go
that
ahead.
Nona rejects this model, no? Because
Yeah.
when she kind like kneels in front of the abbess and is kind like asked, so what type of sister do you want to be? She picks
Yes.
holy sister because this model that Soul has, where she kind like will be in this nirvana state outside of the world, no?
Yeah.
That Nona says, no, that sounds good, but I want this in this world.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah. Precisely right.
Yeah, so it's very interesting as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful. Well, this has been so much fun, and I'm so glad that we had the chance to sit down. We've been talking about doing this for quite a long time, but now that we've done it, I feel like you have enriched my reading, my appreciation of this trilogy even more. I loved it already, but hearing your insights and just getting the chance to gush about it with you has been so much fun for me.
Likewise, I mean, yeah, no,
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. And to all you viewers out there watching this, I anticipate that I'm going to really love the rest of Mark Lawrence's series. I'm probably going to do Impossible Times next because I'm told there is a little bit of
Yeah,
a
I think we were told by the
yeah.
author that there
We
is
were
a
told, we were given a
connection to
hint,
Book
you
of
know.
the Ice. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. But Book
yeah,
of the Ice, I'm so eager to get
yeah,
to.
me too. I'm really looking forward to that because yeah, this was such a joy to read and such a joy to discuss with you. So yeah, I'm sure I will pick that up at some stage. Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody, if you want to hear more brilliance, go to Do Unicorns Read and watch some of Angela's
Wow,
class.
no pressure here.
Yeah. And thanks for watching. And until next time.